Hi guys, today we'll be installing Rails 3 on FreeBSD 9. We'll be using Apache 2.2 for our web server and Passenger 3 as the application server. And as you can see, this is a fresh install of FreeBSD 9. The only thing I've done is check out a fresh copy of the ports tree from the SEN repo, which you will need to do. You could use an old version, like something the FreeBSD installer puts in, but it's always good to have a fresh copy so you don't have to go update something as soon as you're done. So to get started, the first thing we're going to do is edit our make.conf file in etc. And what we need to do in here is add this line. And what this says is we want to use Ruby 1.9, if that wasn't obvious. If you don't put this in here, the port system will try to use 1.8, and we don't want that for Rails 3. This is also the reason why we're using the port system and not the packages that they released with FreeBSD 9, because the Ruby version is 1.8, which we don't want. So save that out. And then we're going to go right into our ports tree, into the Rails directory, which is www.rubygem-rails. And usually what you want to do here is just a make install, but I find it's a lot easier, especially when building something that has a lot of dependencies like Rails does, to do all the configuring up front. And to do that, you say make config recursive, and this will give you all the config questions for all of the dependencies we're going to need to build ahead of time, which is nice because then you can, when you do your make install, you can go get a cup of coffee or take a walk or whatever while it's processing. So most of these, we're just going to accept the defaults. For Rails, we're going to be using Passenger, so make sure that's checked. As you can see, we are using Ruby 1.9, which is what we want. And defaults for most of these. And now you actually have to do this one more time, because we added some dependencies when we told Rails we were going to use Passenger. So Passenger has now been added to the dependency list. So it's going to ask us to config that this time around. Very important, make sure that this option here, symlink, create passenger symlink, is checked. I'm not sure why it's not the default, because you'll see later why it's important, but for right now, make sure it's checked. And then obviously we want to use Apache in this case, so make sure the Apache 2.2 support is checked, and that's the default, so accept that. Obviously this is just going to be a test environment, so we don't really need to tune any of these options. When you go through and want to set up a production environment, you should actually figure out what all those things are saying and make sure that it's correct for your environment. Okay, so that's done, and now the wait. Do a make install, and this will download everything we need, compile it, and install it. I'm on a bit of a slow system here in a VM, so this is probably going to take me at least a half an hour. Hopefully it'll be a little quicker for you. But since we configured everything ahead of time, we can now go enjoy that coffee, and in part 2 we'll look at configuring and creating our first Rails app when this is done.